Our featured speakers today are Mayra, Sacco, and Canter of 2 Wall Street Chief. My name is Ian de Guzman, and I'm the Director of Civic Engagement at Bergen Volunteer Center. Thank you for listening in today. I appreciate your presence. Lauren Turriello, our Chief Philanthropic Officer, and we also have Melissa LaRovadier, Associate Development Director, who will be here with you to assist you today at today's presentation. Before we get started, I want to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's session. I've taken a screenshot here to show you an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You have joined today's webinar listening through your telephone by default. If you would like to use computer speaker system, just locate your audio pane and select microphone and speakers. You also have the ability to ask questions using your questions pane. Simply type in your questions and click send. At the end of the presentation, we will do a Q&A session and take as many questions as we have time for. If you no longer have the time to answer your questions, we will email all of them to our speakers and we will forward you the answers at a later time. Please mute your telephone or audio device, and this webinar will be recorded and archived and can be accessed from our website, www.bergenvolunteers.org. Now let me give you Lauren to talk about all our exciting events at Bergen Volunteer Center. Thank you and have a great day. Lauren?
Thank you, Deanne. For those of you on the call who aren't fully involved with our organization, for a brief background, the Bergen Volunteer Center inspires, trains, and develops volunteers and leaders who want to strengthen our community through meaningful service and effective community engagement. We are a place where you can turn your caring into meaningful action by engaging volunteers to meet community needs. We will continue to serve Bergen with a strength and robust, ever-expanding purpose, which is to look forward, get involved, give back, and redefine volunteerism. This year, we are also celebrating our 50 years of service to the community. Our ability to adapt in an ever-changing economic and social environment has been and will continue to be the key to our enduring success. We look forward to ensuring that nonprofits, corporations, and organizations expand their capacity to provide valuable opportunities for the community to get involved and give back. At 50, we are not getting old, we're just getting started. If you would, please mark your calendars for some of the upcoming following events. First is our Bergen's Amazing Race. It's the first countywide scavenger hunt, and this fun-filled event will challenge your mind and body by having you solve puzzles and test your knowledge about Bergen County. The race will consist of 25 teams who will compete in various physical and mental challenges. Clues provided in each leg of the race will direct teams to perform a series of tasks and ultimately lead you to your next destination. The first team to arrive at the final destination will win the race, and the final stop will include an award ceremony, a barbecue, refreshments, and a lot of laughs. What's also happening that day is the Fall Volunteer Festival. It's a celebration for families and individuals to share the good work that happens in Bergen County. We're going to have several of our nonprofit partners on site with volunteer projects that families can participate in. In addition, we'll have the barbecue lunch, music. It's going to be a wonderful festival, a great party. We encourage you to come out and enjoy a great day for great causes. These events are happening simultaneously on September 18th at Van Saun Park. For more information, please contact either Bian or Melissa LaRovadier or visit our website for additional info. Also, as I mentioned before, we're 50 this year, so our 50th anniversary gala is happening on November 10th, 2016 at the Venetian in Garfield, New Jersey. We encourage you to go to our website to find out more information about the ways that you can participate in this gala and really celebrate 50 years of giving back to the community. Finally, we have our Fifth Friday event, which is set for Friday, September 30th at the Hilton Heights Heights. It'll be a dynamic, motivational presentation by the award-winning anchor and best-selling author Steve Adubato, who will be facilitating. For more information on Fifth Friday, please visit www.bergenleads.org. And again, that date is Friday, September 30th, 11:30 to 2 p.m. at the Hilton Hasbrook Heights. Now on to our wonderful speakers this afternoon who will be presenting to you. Mayra Sacco and Melissa Canter of 2 Wall Street Chicks. Mayra is a 2 Wall Street Chicks partner, a mindfulness and executive coach, and a diversity and inclusion and leadership development consultant. She has a 30-plus year career on Wall Street as a senior business leader in financial services. Mayra founded Wall Street's Women Alliance in 2011. She is on the board at the Volunteer Center, and she's on the board of directors of the Women's Bond Club, from 2009 to 2013. Mayra also has a BS in finance from NYU. And our other presenter today is Melissa Canter. She is a 2 Wall Street Chicks partner as well. She has over 15 years experience as a transition coach, stress resilience expert, teacher of mindfulness, yoga, and Qigong. Melissa also has a 20-year career on Wall Street. She received her MBA at NYU Stern School of Business and is a Phi Beta Kappa scholar. Ladies, the floor is yours, and thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Bian. And I can see that there's quite a bit happening at the Volunteer Center, so a lot to take advantage of. So thank you again for having us here today. Melissa and I are delighted to be here, and we welcome everyone. And in fact, if some of you are wondering as to what Melissa and I look like, here we go. Here are your 2 Wall Street Chicks, and we'll be with you for the next hour. Our topic today is, will you wait a moment? And we'd actually like to make the day a fun and interactive session.
Hi, it's Melissa, and because there are 2 of us, and I want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day, we'd like to make this session more of a dialogue, more of a conversation, so that everyone in the audience also feels included.
Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to start with what is mindfulness and why it's critical in today's world. And we're also going to be speaking about why mindfulness will make you a better leader, person, and also some techniques that we're going to share with you and hopefully will start you in your own journey on mindfulness. And then ultimately why mindfulness strengthens your ability to be resilient and how it creates a more resilient mindset. But before we get started with that, I'd like to do a poll and a polling question so we can just get a better sense of the audience and what exactly your experience with mindfulness has been. So the question is, what is mindfulness? Is it always being positive? Is it sitting cross-legged in a monastery in Tibet? Is it being aware of the moment you're experiencing? Is it being kind? And if you can take a few moments just to start the polling question now. Thanks, Bian, for putting it up.
No problem.
And where are we in terms of percentages?
All right, 100% voted.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I guess we will have to. Can we see the results?
You want me to do? Okay, sure. Here it is.
Oh, well, I can see we have a lot of mindfulness practitioners out there, so that's a good thing. Any other comments, Melissa?
Well, it looks like we should end the webinar right now,
yeah.
since everybody got the answer right.
You might be able to teach us a few things, which is a good thing. And actually, it's wonderful to see that more and more people are familiar and just hearing about mindfulness. So today, what we're going to go through is, as I mentioned, what mindfulness is, why it makes you a better leader, and why it strengthens your resiliency. So I think with that, let me turn it over to Melissa.
Hi, everybody. So I'm starting with this slide, the slide of the neuroscience behind mindfulness. And the reason I'm starting this way is because mindfulness is not something that's woo-woo. In fact, I'm sure all of you know, since pretty much everybody got the right answer, that there is indeed a mindfulness revolution going on. And it's wonderful because we're all moving faster and faster. In fact, the distractibility index is off the chart for most of us. It turns out that we learn more in a day than we used to at the turn of the century in a year. And the difficulty with this is that we have something called the progress paradox going on, where the technology is fabulous, we've made a lot of progress, but we're not really doing much better in terms of getting things done. And in fact, most of us feel very stressed and that we don't have enough time and that there's a lot of cultural stress going on. And there's been studies at many universities now and research institutions which show that the practice of mindfulness, which I'm going to actually give a definition for in a few moments, can really result in changes in the brain. And that is what neuroscience is. There's actually a field called neuroplasticity. And what that means is that the brain, which 15 years ago we thought was static, can actually change. And the thing that's happening with most of us, if you look at that fork and knife over there, we're being run by a part of the brain called the reptilian brain, or I like to say the amygdala. And long ago, when we were hunter-gatherers, we really had to watch out for threats on that Serengeti as we were being chased by this saber-toothed tiger. We'd be lunched very soon, or we wouldn't make it to lunch. And the problem is that most of us don't have the skills to turn off that reptilian brain. So we're no longer being driven by the saber-toothed tiger. But how many of you are being mugged by your emails, by your thoughts, by your tweets? I'm willing to bet some of you are doing 18,000 things now as we speak.
Being distracted right as we speak.
And so what they found is that the practices of mindfulness, and there are many, many practices. Today we're only going to do 3. So when you really practice, though, they found that it changed what was going on in your brain, your actual chemistry. And that reptilian part of the brain got smaller, and a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex got bigger. So the thing to know really by this slide is that you're normal, and no matter how much you're going to practice these techniques, whatever technique, because we're human beings and we do have all these different parts of the brain, and this fight or flight response is very good. God forbid you have an accident or something like that. You do want to have that fight or flight response, and yet we don't want it running the show all day long. So I want to just talk a little bit about what mindfulness really is. And a simple definition of mindfulness is just the ability to pay attention on purpose in this moment without judgment. Or it's awareness. Or it's the practice of being here right now, not in the past, not in the future. To take it a little further, there's a guy named John Kabat-Zinn. I'm sure a lot of you know who he is. We call him the father of mindfulness here in the West. And he says that there are a bunch of foundations to the practice of mindfulness. One is patience. And I don't know about you, Mayra, but even though I practice
it always gets tested.
It does get tested. The other thing is a beginner's mind. How many of us show up at work or show up in our life with stories in our head about people we're interacting with? And being mindful allows you to start from here without the baggage or without judgment or the experience of what happened even a week ago with this person. Not controlling things. Control is an illusion. I don't know about you, I feel safe when I feel in control, and yet it's not real. Trust. All of us are born with intuition, and yet in this society it's really not valued. And it's a great tool, and mindfulness allows us to pay attention to those really good voices in our head that we can trust. Acceptance, accepting what's happening here in the moment, which I have to say, you know, stress is really that space where you don't want to accept what's going on right now. You want it to be different. And then finally, letting go. We hear letting go all the time, and yet most of us just don't know how to do it. And that is what we hope to teach today. You're not going to walk out of this webinar and know everything. We don't know everything, but I hope that we give you a taste of what it's like to be mindful right here, right now.
And it's a practice. So, and by practice, it's something that you continuously are doing and perfecting and just getting better at naturally.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, Mayra, but after all that explanation, I think we should get right into a practice. And the first technique is very simple. The techniques, as I said, are very simple. We don't want to make it complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, after being on Wall Street all that time, both of us, we don't want to follow rules.
Mm-hmm.
So trust yourself and what feels good.
Mm-hmm.
The first technique is really just a shoulder shrug with a sigh. So if you can, just sitting here now, closing your eyes to eliminate a sense, I'm going to ask you to do this with Mayra and I, and all we're going to do, don't do it yet, is we're going to inhale through the nose. We're going to hold our shoulders all the way up to our ears. I like to say we use our shoulders as earrings. And on the exhale, we're just going to let go of the breath. And the reason this works, again, through all the study of neuroscience, is they found that this engages a part of the body called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of fight or flight. And rather than explaining it, because I could explain it all day, I want you to experience it in the audience. So here we go. When you're ready, close your eyes. And I'd like you to inhale and bring your shoulders all the way up to your ears and hold for a moment, and then just make a nice sigh. And again, just playing along with us, even if you're in your house by yourself with your cat. Inhale.
He might be staring at you right now.
Inhale, take your shoulders up and hold. And on the exhale, sigh. And just one more time. Inhale, shoulders up. And on the exhale, just sigh.
And I don't know about everyone else, but I can say that just even doing that, I felt my heartbeat slower. I just felt more relaxed and in the moment. And we'd love to hear what perhaps some of you have felt. And there's a chat box that you should see on your right-hand side. And just a word or two, just anything that pops into your head after having experienced that first technique, if you can share that with us. Okay, we're seeing several of them coming through.
Feels good.
Okay, so it feels good, calming.
Peaceful.
Okay, so that, again, it gives you that idea, and as we said, you don't walk away an expert in any of this, because this is a constant practice, and we constantly are practicing and learning new techniques, because I think there are how many thousands of them.
Exactly. And I also want to say that beginner's mind, even though I've studied a lot for the past 16 years, a lot of indigenous cultures which had these practices. Of course, they didn't have TV or electricity, so just being in nature was mindful,
was mindful.
in itself. We always do try and go back to that beginner's mind, and I hope some of you are doing that.
So now that we know what mindfulness is and we've experienced our first technique, we thought we'd share a little bit about our stories and how we got to mindfulness. So Melissa, why don't you start?
Okay, great. So like Mayra, I worked on Wall Street, and I always wanted to make money. That was very, very important to me. And what better place than that land of money, Wall Street? And it was very, very stressful to get there. I had to have the right pedigree, the right degrees, and I think a lot of you can relate to that. And especially being a woman back in the dinosaur ages when I was there, 1980 to 2000, it was really, really hard to get a job. And no, I didn't have any relatives, but by hook or crook I was able to get there. And I worked at a very, very large institution covering many different customers. And I was a commission salesman. And my trade size was between 100 and 300 million. So needless to say, there was a tremendous amount of stress.
I could only imagine.
And I would do a trade that was literally 100 million, and I would feel great. And of course, I thought I died and went to heaven. But then the next day, I had to come in and do another trade because it was only as good as, I was only as good as my last trade. And during that time, in order to get down to Wall Street, I took planes, trains, and automobiles, and the commute was an hour and a half. So that added to the pressure, because when I got there, I was exhausted, and then I had the entire day of being in this, I like to call it a den of testosterone. And after a while, I really began to just feel very numb. Now, during that time, life happens while we're making other plans. And my mother was killed in a car accident the day after Thanksgiving. And within a year, my father died of a broken heart. And
that's horrible, Melissa.
It was hard.
How did you deal with that?
Well, and you know, I don't think I did deal with it very well. And the truth is in this society, you're basically given about a week to grieve. And then I had to show up on Wall Street, again, the trading floor. And of course, for the first hour, people would ask how I was, but they didn't really care because, you know, we're all doing the best we can.
And I just put up a picture, which is probably what Melissa was looking like, if not worse.
Yeah, right. That's
during
a
that
good
time
picture.
period. So.
And what happened was I started realizing that no matter how much money I was making, and I was like a baseball player in terms of my contracts, instead of, you know, as I said earlier, I thought I had died and gone to heaven making all this money. I was actually making a dying. And one day I looked at myself, and of course this didn't happen immediately. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like what I looked like. And I realized I was pretty much dead. And I left, which was pretty amazing because...
especially during those times.
Yes.
You didn't hear that often.
Right. You didn't hear that often, and it's really hard, quite honestly, to walk away from all that money. But I knew that I was no longer alive. And so the last day of work, I was singing Free at Last, Free at Last. And who knew that when I was in my house in suburban Siberia, where some of you might be now, I had absolutely no community. And so I did a lot of different things to create community. And one of them was going to a yoga class. So I know a lot of you probably know yoga, have a yoga practice, and I went really because I needed the structure. And the truth was I hated it. I hated the last 5 minutes. For me to sit still didn't really resonate. But one day after going for a while, I was able to sit still. And in that moment, I looked out the sky and I saw it was blue, and I didn't have a thought. And it turns out we have a thought every 6 seconds, and in that moment I didn't have a thought and decided I really needed to get more of that. And so for the past 16 years I've been on that journey of finding different techniques, different philosophies of how one brings mindfulness into your life. So Mayra, you heard my story. What's your story?
Well, similar to Melissa, I started my career a very long time ago, early in my career on Wall Street. I was there for almost 35 years. And again, similar to Melissa, was commuting. I commuted almost 4 hours a day. Between that and the 12 to 14-hour workday, if you do the math, there's very little time left for yourself and definitely for your family. And since family always came first, I clearly was the one that was left with zero time to tend to. And, you know, one of the things, and I did many things on Wall Street, but the one thing I was doing as the last few years while I was on Wall Street, I was managing the TARP program that came out of the financial crisis in 2008. And many of you might be familiar with that term. It was all over the newspapers back then. It was the program that the United States Treasury had put in place to basically save the world. I mean, I don't think people realized how close we were to the second largest depression since the 1920s, and it probably would have been far worse just because of the state of where we are in the economy and how global the economy is when you compare it to where we were in the 1920s.
Well, and you were in the news every day, so that was really rough.
Everything we did was in the news. We were tasked with working with the Treasury. We were doing things that we had never thought of before. And to be frank, it was the first time in my career where I really knew the purpose of what it was, why I was there and why I was doing what I was doing, because I felt like I was saving the world. I had over 125 people that we amassed in record time to try and get all these programs up and running. And
all of those people were reporting to you.
All of these people were reporting, multiple teams, global teams, in fact. And we spent the next few years working extremely long hours, but I'll tell you, the purpose was there, it was real, and we were all highly engaged. However, which luckily for all of us, the economy started to improve, and what we found is that many of the programs we had put in place we no longer needed, and we were starting to unwind. And unfortunately with that came some layoffs that I had to do with many of the people that were on my team.
That's right.
Another stressful and highly emotional time that I felt, especially when you're working that closely on something so meaningful. I mean, we had relationships. They weren't just employees. And then, some employees got repositioned, which was the good thing. And then all of a sudden, it was the Monday right after Easter, and I walked in, and my boss called me that morning and had said, "Can you see me in my office?" And I immediately said, "Here we go again. There must be another layoff that I'm going to have to exercise," and I already had just kind of been conditioned for that. So I walked into his office, and as soon as I opened the door, I saw the head of HR, and I saw my boss, and I saw them with very glum faces, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized this wasn't to talk about another layoff of my, staff. This was my layoff. And I became a victim of the downsizing that I had, executed so often prior to that. So needless to say, I immediately went into the hallway. I remember it vividly, in my office and in the stairwell, and sat down on steps and put my head in my hands and said, wow. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do with it. So in Wall Street, as in many other industries, when you're laid off and you're in a high position, you basically are given an hour and a half to pack your bags and head out the door. So that is exactly what I did, and what I found myself is sitting in Siberia, in suburban Siberia, like Melissa, thinking about, who is Mayra? What does she like? What does she want to do? A clean canvas. And that led me to doing many things for me, because I realized I had not really spent any time on myself. And I took yoga, I took meditation with Buddhist monks, I did bongo lessons. I'm a percussionist now. And in fact, it was during those experiences that Melissa and I came to meet, and we discovered kind of, this mindfulness together. Melissa was already on the journey far ahead of me, but I've learned quite a bit from her. So.
Well, I don't know about you, but after hearing about my mother dying and father dying and you being fired, I think we're ready for our next technique.
I think so.
So would you wait a moment out there and just take another technique with us and practice? So the next technique that we'd like to teach is called balloon breathing. And the way this works is you pick a color and you imagine that it's in your belly. If you could put your hands on your belly with us, imagine this color inside there. And what we're going to do, don't do it yet, is have you inhale and fill up that balloon in your belly, not in your chest. So the balloon is in the belly so that the diaphragm can actually have space. And on the exhale, you're just going to empty the balloon. And just like the first technique, we will do this 3 times.
And we can close our eyes and have your feet flat on the ground if that's comfortable for you.
Great. So when you're ready, having that color balloon in your belly, I want you to inhale, filling up that balloon as big as you can, and then on the exhaling, just emptying the balloon. And take your time. And again, inhaling, filling up the balloon nice and slowly, and then exhaling and emptying the balloon. And just one more time, inhaling, filling up the belly nice and slow, and then exhaling and emptying the balloon. And then just stay for a moment and just notice, are there any sensations in the body? Because breathing does bring you back into the body, and it gets you out of your head.
And I know that after having all of those stories that we were saying, I was already starting to feel that tension back from Wall Street. So to me, that was a very timely breathing exercise. And again, we'd love to hear from you if anyone wants to share their comments, 1 or 2 words, just to throw it out there on the chat box as to how you felt and what was the experience like for you.
And this technique versus the shoulder shrug technique.
Mm-hmm. And they're all slight variations, but it does, again, I think more often than not, we believe that breathing just comes naturally to us, which it does. However, how we breathe.
Yes, I agree. And again,
it's something that we forget.
Right. And a lot of us hold our breath. And even though we're practicing all the time, I'm guilty of it a lot, especially when I'm driving in New Jersey on Route 4.
Yes.
As I grip the wheel.
As we grip the wheel, we forget to breathe and forget to be mindful. So now let's just move on after we've done our exercise and we've learned what mindfulness is, and we're at our second technique. You know, why mindfulness is critical. And again, it's more critical now than ever. We mentioned how we're being barraged with technology, all of the distractions that we have throughout the day. In fact, there's a statistic that talks about whenever you're doing and you're engaged in an activity, 47% of the time that you spend in that activity, you're doing something else other than that activity. So back to that, you know, progress paradox. We think we're being very, very productive, but in fact, we're not making very mindful choices. The risks, the health risks. I mean, mindfulness also lowers your heartbeat, which lowers your inflammation in the body, which again creates a healthier experience for yourself. And one of the things that I know France just recently did, I don't know if you're aware, but they actually prevent employees from actually accessing their emails on the weekends, which I can tell you I would have loved when I was on Wall Street.
Let's see if they do it
because,
now.
Yeah, I mean, I was tethered to my BlackBerry, but I would love to see that in the United States. So again, it's all of the things that we need for today's environment.
So how do you think mindfulness makes you a better leader? I'm going to say, you know, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you become mindful, you seem to develop much more empathy, compassion. You begin to change the lens as to how you're seeing things. You become more grateful. And I want to say that one of the things that I've witnessed in all the leaders that I've worked with, when you become mindful, you start to make yourself aware of your biases. We all have biases, and you know, it's not like the old days. The employees now look different than they used to look. You know, I was one woman on Wall Street. You were one woman on Wall Street. And now we have cross generations. We have different colors, different ethnicities. So I think one of the most important ways we can focus on is that leaders are able to see their biases. And in fact, you have worked with a lot of leaders. Why don't you give us a story of how mindfulness and some of the techniques have worked for you?
Okay, well, in fact, one of them, when we were doing the balloon breathing exercise, one of the individuals that I worked with came to mind. I was working with a senior executive called Joe, and he was at a large utility company. And I was coaching him on a number of things, but he came to me because he was telling me that, you know, he had staff meetings and he has a very cross-generational, multifaceted team, and he felt that he was having difficulty engaging the millennials and the women on his team. He would have staff meetings and he would hear primarily from his most senior tenured employees, but he just felt like he just couldn't engage that other population. So I told them that, you know, before you step into that meeting, and do it right before you're heading into the meeting, because let's all face it, we've all been leaders, and I know that when I walked into the staff meeting, more often than not, I was running from the last meeting that I was a part of, making it to my staff meeting, and then trying to kind of wing it half the time as to what it is that I wanted to talk to them about. So,
well, and isn't that how most of us leave our lives, going from one thing to another?
So I said, be very purposeful. Right before you enter your staff meeting, give yourself 5 minutes to just do balloon breathing. And I did the whole balloon breathing just like we did with you. And I said, do this exercise right before so that it can center you. And try to go into that meeting with an open heart and an open mind, kind of that beginner's mind that Melissa said. It also allows you to be much more of an active listener. So I was seeing him 2 weeks after that, and he wrote to me, he goes, I'm dying to have you have our coaching session. So when we actually spoke the next time, he goes, I was shocked by what had happened. He goes, I did exactly what you said. I purposely gave myself time between the meetings, and I did the exercise and went in. And what I discovered is not that the women and the millennials weren't being engaged, but that my senior, most vocal, tenured managers were oftentimes speaking right over them, were interrupting them, were not letting them finish a thought, and it made me kind of be aware of the dynamics of my meeting and how I was actually allowing it. So the next time, he purposely went in prepared and then engaged all of the individuals around the table. When he saw behaviors like being interrupted or whatnot, he made sure to just, and again, he didn't do it to disengage anyone else, but he made sure that he'd give that person time to finish the thought, to go around the room, to listen to everyone. And he found that he was also not listening even to his most tenured employees who are more less outspoken. So it changed the dynamics, and he already, just in a couple of staff meetings, started to get ideas that typically wouldn't have popped up in the past.
And isn't that interesting? Because it's really just taking a moment.
It's just taking a moment to do that. So that's really where we are today. So with the next topic, so we've talked about mindfulness. We've gone through why it's critical. We've also spent some time doing a couple of techniques. So the next thing that really mindfulness really helps with is resiliency. And you know, we have this character there, Gumby. I don't know how many of you remember the clay animated character, because we're showing our age a little bit here.
Very old.
But you know, Gumby was one of those characters that got himself into all sorts of mayhem and would be stretched and tangled and whatnot, but at the end of the day would always come back to its natural state. And if I think of resiliency, that's really what it is. It's your ability to recover, to recover from and adjust from trauma, from any adversity, but even more important, it's to move forward, to be able to not only recover, but then find it within yourself to move forward. And we'll talk about how mindfulness, and we're all resilient. So it's not, mindfulness isn't new, and that's what makes you resilient, because we're all resilient. We've all have had our own trauma. However, it's how it helps you with resiliency. So when I look at this next slide, and Marissa and always love this one, you know, these are famous failures. Now, you would never think the word failure would be associated with most of these faces like Oprah and Michael Jordan and Steve Jobs and Einstein. However, at one point in their life, they were told they did not have what it took to get to where they wanted to get to. And clearly, we all know history showed complete opposite.
Yeah.
And in fact, many of these people have a mindfulness practice,
right,
because they've gone on to see how that even strengthens their resiliency even further. But maybe this is the best time to kind of go through another technique.
So let's go through our third and last technique. And for those of you who didn't join at the beginning, I just wanted to mention that there are thousands of techniques. What works for one may not work for another. Frankly, your mindfulness technique may be running. It may be painting. It may be salsa dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And
or cooking. I find cooking is mindful.
Exactly. I'm just going to give you the next technique because it only takes a moment. So the next technique is called candle breathing. And what you're going to do, let me explain it first with your permission. We're going to inhale through our nose, and I'm going to add breath counting to it. I'm going to count for 4 seconds, and then we're going to blow out a candle for 4. Just like the other 2 techniques, we're going to do it 3 times. And in the interest of time, I'll do it a little quicker than the others, and we'll check with everybody and see how this technique worked. So again, just closing your eyes when you're ready. I want you to inhale through your nose to a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, and now blow it out as if you were blowing out a candle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and blow out a candle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last time. In 1, 2, 3, 4, and blow out that candle. 1, 2, 3, 4, and just breathe naturally now. And again, coming back into the body. Notice how you feel.
And you know, one of the things that it reminded me of too is when we were doing this technique, because I use a very similar technique with another leader, in fact, and it had to do around resiliency, is this was a senior manager. She was a woman. Her name was Sally. She was working for a large healthcare company, and she felt that her biggest strength was replying to emails like immediately. She would go after them, and it would be like within seconds, no matter where she was and what she was doing. And one day her boss asked her to come in and said, listen, I've been noticing from you, and I've also actually heard it from some of your peers and some of my managers, that you tend to be very defensive with some of the email responses that you come tell. So I get to respond right away, no matter where I am, what I'm doing, and people know exactly what's on my mind.
And there's an expectation to that as well.
And there
I
is.
mean,
And there
even
is.
with our phone, it is very difficult not to respond to our texts.
Right. They're there. It's constantly. It's in your face. So, so that was, I was coaching her on other things, and she had come to me and said, you know, what can I do about that? Because that's clearly not how I want to be perceived. And I had actually, we did a balloon breathing and we did the candle breathing. And I asked her when she gets an email to just take 30 seconds to a minute, because I knew that's all she probably could afford to take because she was so accustomed to responding. And I said, just do the technique and then come back to the email. And she did that a few times, and eventually she started to realize that, you know, 98% of the emails that I would react to really were benign. I didn't have to react. I didn't have to be defensive. I didn't even have to respond that quickly. And it was something that was brought back to her attention by her boss and said, you know, I don't know what you're doing, but things have actually improved. So again, if you only take a moment, it's all it took was for her a moment. And it's a practice. So she doesn't get it right all the time, but it's something that she's continuously practicing on. So just to kind of cover on our resiliency and just to wrap resiliency, it's really another opportunity to catch your mind. What triggers you? Be aware of those triggers, and then more importantly, make better choices so that those triggers don't cause the same behaviors over and over again. And in fact, studies have shown that the more mindful you are and the more you can manage those behaviors, you're changing your brain. So the next time around, it'll just come more naturally.
And isn't it interesting? We have about 80,000 moments in a day. And even if you're taking 5 of those 80,000, I predict that it will change how you view things.
Absolutely. I know we've experienced it. I know I've experienced it firsthand in the last couple of years.
There are techniques, and in this time we've only experienced 3. But we know now mindfulness is helpful in so many ways. It helps your biases. It helps you filter out what's important. It helps you tackle your day. Like everything else, though, you have to practice. So knowing that, and with the little time we have left, why don't we practice, again, the 3 techniques. So when you're ready, again, eliminating a sense, I want in all of these techniques, there's a response or an opportunity for you to exhale. And this time when you exhale, I want you to consciously say the words to yourself, letting go. And see if that changed the dynamic of the technique for you at all. Because in these moments that we have, that's all we're trying to do, to let go. So first with the shoulder shrugs, inhale, hold your shoulders up to your ears. On the exhale, nice sigh, letting go. We'll do it one more time. Inhale, shoulders up all the way to the ears now. And on the exhale, sigh, letting go. And let's go into the belly breathing. Put your hands, the balloon breathing, put your hands on your belly, get that color back. And inhale, filling up the balloon. And then exhale, thinking, letting go. And one more time, inhale, filling up the balloon, and exhaling, letting go. And finally, our last technique that we learned today, candle breathing with the breath counting. So when you're ready, through the nose, inhaling 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the exhale, blowing out that candle, 1, 2, 3, 4. And one more time, inhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4, and blowing out the candle, letting go, letting go, letting go. And just taking that moment now to be in the body, taking that moment to start from here and make a mindful choice.
So as we said, mindfulness is really a shift. And both of us love this quote that says, one's destination is never a place, but rather a new way of looking at things. And we hope that just through today's session and the few techniques that we've taught you, that you too will have an opportunity to look at things a little differently and experience your own shift. So again, Bian, Lauren, and Melissa, thank you very much for having us share this hour with you and everyone on the phone. And if anyone has further questions or interest around mindfulness, Melissa and I's passion is bringing mindfulness to the corporate workplace because we've experienced how difficult that is in today's challenging world. So if you'd like us to talk to you more about bringing mindfulness into the workplace, we have our contact information right there. And thank you again. And now, Bian, I don't know if you have a few minutes, if we'd like to open it up for some questions.
Yes, Melissa and Mayra, thank you so much. That was really refreshing. Melissa and I feel like we're ready to go to sleep.
Good.
We open the floor for questions. If you have any questions for Melissa and Mayra, if you don't have time to ask them questions, but you do want to keep in touch, their information is right on the screen right now. So take a moment to write them down. Melissa Canter, you can email her at melissa@melissacanter.com and Mayra at msacco@maidenenterprises.com. All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you again, Melissa and Mayra. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ended the session. Hold on for a second.
Oh, sure.
All right. Ellen said thank you. Well, everyone should say thank you. So on behalf of the audience and Bergen Volunteer Center, we'd like to thank you. Hey, everyone.
You too. Have a mindful day.
Yes. Okay. Bye.